dive into our little marriage chat today. Looks like Derek and Becky just jumped on. We're waiting for it to connect here. There they are. What's up, guys?
Oh, what's up, Cole?
You know where I'm at right now. I'm sitting in Marielle and Marissa's little studio.
Oh, we love them.
It's the only place I can go to get away from the children for these little events.
Yep. We're in our garage.
Doing this.
Yeah.
It's the only place it's fun to hear ourselves or anyone else. So
fighting for silence has become the number one goal. It's crazy. I can still hear the basketball out there, which I love. The kids in the background, but they're clearly not doing schoolwork right now. What's that?
On here, somebody just said, "I love you." Do they love you, Cole? Do they love Derek?
I mean, first of all, Becky, to know me is to love me. To know me is to love me. So I'm sure they did mean me. As you know, I'm one of the most likable, lovable people on the planet.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. So, thank you. Well, listen, folks. I want to introduce Becky and Derek. Let you guys kind of introduce yourself. I think a lot of people know who you are, but just for those that don't, they're on staff at Jesus Culture. Derek does worship. Becky's the youth pastor. Friends of ours. What's that?
Derek's the worship pastor, and I'm the youth pastor. So we technically are in charge of like a fourth of the church. Maybe.
I don't.
You're in charge of more than anybody besides Banny.
But it's true. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. So make sure Banny knows your value on a regular basis. I'll text him and remind him as well. Becky's one of our speakers. She actually travels for us and speaks for MR. Derek is our go-to worship leader. So if you ever request an event, Derek might be the guy leading worship if you ask for worship. But yeah, we've been developing a friendship, and funny, our friendship has developed more since we left Sacramento than before. It's as weird as that is. But I think in the time that I've gotten to know you guys in the last 2.5 years, I've fallen more in love with you guys on a regular basis. Like, gosh, I wish we lived in the same city. But also, like, your willingness to share your story. I think that the strength that you guys have in your relationship, the uniqueness of your dating life. So I'm excited for you guys to just kind of give what you guys have this morning. Anything else you want to do to introduce yourself that I didn't cover that people should know about the wonderful Johnsons?
Well, we've been married for 11 years. We've been together for 16 years. I met Derek when I was 15 years old. So we kind of grew up together and cut our teeth on all kinds of life skills together. So we had a pre-Jesus relationship and a post-Jesus relationship. So that's something that's been really cool as we've pastored people to, like, we understand, we're not the typical like ministry couple. We're like, oh, we met at Awana and
then summer camp.
A summer camp experience, and my dad was his pastor, and we went through master's commission together, and then in Mexico together. Like, that is not what our relationship is. Like, no, we
were exceptionally broken, started dating. We were a little less broken and got married. And we're just a little less broken now.
No, we're amazing. Somebody said the volume seems low, so I'm bringing it back.
Volume seems low. Maybe my headphones are going to help on my side.
Is that better? Chevy 3B.
Thanks for the back Chevy 3B.
Boom.
So yeah, that's we have 2 kids, 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and yeah, so that's a little bit.
That's awesome. And you always jumped to being a youth pastor, right, Becky?
No. That's a whole nother Instagram live.
That's right. And just for those that don't know, I would like to confirm this now because I know you're thinking it. Sorry, Chris Kilala. Yes, Derek is the best looking Jesus Culture worship leader. We all know this. I don't feel uncomfortable saying it because it's just the truth.
That's ridiculous.
No comment.
Do you not agree? Becky, do you not agree? You just said that's ridiculous.
I do agree, but it's just annoying. Derek gets told he's good looking by more people than I've ever, like, more straight men tell Derek he's good looking than women.
Well, don't take it personal. You're beautiful too, Becky, but it's just rare to see such an equally matched couple.
You're Zach Morris.
people just realize I need the encouragement, that's what it is.
That's right. We just know he's more insecure than you, Becky. Derek's just more insecure than you. We know it. So we're just souring him with love.
Yeah, keep it coming. That's good.
Okay. All right. So let's get into what we're talking about today. What we want to do is just give some tips to young married couples. Now, obviously, if you're on here and you've been married a ton of decades or a ton of years, I'm sure this is going to be beneficial for you. But I think that young marriage, those like first 5 years, man, so critical. You know, I heard a stat from Kurt Harlow, one of the pastors at Bayside, that said the average marriage ends by 7 years. If a marriage is going to end, it ends at 7. Here's an interesting stat. In addition to that, Kinsey Institute out of Indiana University said the average marriage doesn't report having good sex until year 12.
Wow.
Wow.
So we don't have good sex till year 12, but a lot of marriages are ending at year 7. It means it's a really critical time, right? Like those first 7 years, first 5 years are really critical. I know it was a challenge for us. I know there was challenges for you guys. And so, you know, would love for you guys just to share, hey, what are some points, some key things, some things that you wish you would have known or that you learned that were super valuable for you in the early years that could help some of the young marriages?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked last night about what we could share, and it's so hard to boil it down to just a few because it's like, okay, having a good marriage is a lifelong journey. There is so much that you need to do. There's so much, there's just so much that needs to be said about it. But we were cute, and we have 3 C's. So if anybody's taking notes.
Hey, it's like the Zix. We're all C's. I know what you're doing there.
So we have 3, boiled it down to like, all right, if we had 15 minutes with the Moral Revolution audience and young marrieds were going to listen, what are 3 important things? And so if you're going to write it down, we have 3 C's. We'll hit each one. It's control, counsel, and communication.
I love controlling my wife. I love that that's the first point.
Totally.
That has been the best part of our marriage is when she lets me control her a lot.
Absolutely. Control, counsel, communication. So control is you have to give up your idea, your need, your desire to control your spouse. And it's, you know, everybody's going to say, like, nobody's going to admit, like, oh, yeah, I love to control my spouse. But we all are trying to do it. And it's just found really wonderful ways to mask our manipulation. We have found really sneaky ways to dodge that term, I'm controlling you. And, you know, gosh, you know how, if you're thinking like, oh, I don't know if I really try to control my spouse. Like, I think I'm a pretty, you know, easygoing, or I've given up that notion a long time ago. Do you give the silent treatment? Do you slam doors in an argument? Like, the silent treatment is one of the main ways, you know, like, do you cold shoulder your spouse after an argument or during a disagreement? That is manipulation, because what you're trying to do is, you're trying to get them to, I'm going to slam the door so that you come and chase me down the hallway and want to talk to me. I'm doing I'm going to give you the silent treatment. I'm going to act in ways that I'm trying to elicit something out of you that I'm not just saying, hey, I need you to do this.
Totally.
One of the things that we've talked about a lot was, you know, you try to control when you feel afraid. And early on in our marriage, it was every time that she was different than the person that I am, anytime that she has needs that were different than mine, they created a ton of anxiety, and then vice versa. And so now we're caught in this little game of, I'm trying to make you just like me, and you're trying to make me just like you. And we both hate that, because that's actually work. So even for us now, you know, and that really was, that was so much of the first 5 years of our marriage, was navigating that dynamic. As we've matured, the longer that we're married, all of it is really, I feel the happiest, even as different as she is from me. I feel the happiest when she is herself, when I am myself. And we can kind of lay down all those little games where we would try to control or manipulate, or even a lot of times it's just that you would speak down to, you would insult, you would discourage their differences that aren't like you. And so you kind of systematically chip away at them. And so I think that is just such a trap in those first 5 years of marriage.
Even using sex. Yeah, because a lot of people even use sex, like you're talking about, where it's withholding that or using that in some way, shape, or form to get the other one to do what you want. Yeah, that's so good. What would you guys say? What are like some, like if someone's realizing, hey, you know, I think I have this issue. Like, man, I do give the silent treatment to get someone to do what I want, or I create some. I think ultimately what you're getting at, correct me if I'm wrong, is creating some type of almost like reprimand or discipline. Like we're trying to make our spouse pay the price for not doing what we want them to do.
Oh yeah,
in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely, yeah. It's that point. It's that concept of punishment. Like I think in some way I have the right to punish you for not doing what I want you to do, and we just have to let that go. First of all,
it's good.
You have to reconcile that Jesus Christ paid for the punishment of our sins. Like if you have elevated yourself to a place where you think you have the right to punish your spouse, like I would very, very quickly go, okay, hold on, get with the Lord. And if you're going to call yourself a follower of Jesus, you need to immediately reconcile that I don't hold space to punish anyone. Yeah. My spouse is unpunishable because Jesus took, it's Danny Silk's message, unpunishable. Jesus took the punishment for his sin. So his mistreatment or whatever else. And so I think that's really important. And then just being okay to be different, like being okay to disagree. We would get locked up in arguments the first 5 years over the stupidest things. Like, oh my gosh, just so stupid. Movies where you're going to eat, political views. And it's like, what's happening is I'm so afraid that you're going to be different from me because I don't know what that means. I don't know how to manage that. I'm afraid of, what does that difference actually, what does that actually mean for marriage? Or if I could just tell young marrieds, like, you are two different people. That's the beauty. And it's not like two halves trying to become a whole. It's two whole people joining, being in union.
It's good.
Like, oh my gosh, let your spouse be different. Let them like a different, I'm reading the comments. Let them like different restaurants. Let them have a different viewpoint on the world. And you don't have to be so worried about making that like you or, so
totally.
We have learned, man, like even recently we had we were talking about something heated and it's like, you know what? I'm probably not going to agree with you in this. Like, let's just be okay with that. And let's enjoy that. This is how you view the world. And this is how I view the world, especially right now in freaking global crisis. Our differences are elevated so much. Like, oh, wow, this is how you're handling this world situation. This is how I forgot
you thought this way.
Yes, totally.
Well, and we would spend so much energy warring against each other's differences that we spent no energy at getting good at compromise, which should have looked like, you like A.
Say it again, D. Come on.
But yeah, it's like, you like this, I like this. How can we meet in the middle? It's taken us years to figure that out. That's what your marriage is going to look like in the healthiest place. Is that you can both be you, but you're going to have to compromise.
Oh,
hey, there he is.
Service for a second. I just came outside.
Awesome. They're saying it's paused, but I think we're here.
I think we're still here.
The video is paused.
I believe we're here. Is it still paused?
Okay. It was so good. They're saying help. I think we're still here now.
Are we back, people?
Everybody's saying it's paused, but I think we're fine.
I think we're back.
Okay, we're
now.
back. We're back.
Yay. We got a yay.
All right, sweet. I don't remember. So Derek, you said something really good before we left. That's all I remember.
Yep.
Yes.
It was life-changing. Everyone's marriages. No, I was saying that we spent a ton of energy just warring against each other's differences those first few years of marriage. And so we were pretty ignorant at how to compromise. We just didn't know how to do it. It would be a fight, and then no one would get their way, right? We were fantastic at lose-lose. And so it's
man,
how to compromise.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So what you're going after is you're not going after situations. You're not going even after. We have this concept of it has to be win-lose. Well, who's going to win and who's going to lose? It's like
right.
Make it win-win and learn the beauty of compromise. That'd be another C. Compromise. But so that's kind of the control thing to kind of wrap it up. And then the next thing, and this is the only way we learned how to give up our need to control one another, our desire to control one another, was by getting really good counsel. So control, counsel is the second C. And here it is.
Yeah.
You're just not going to have a good marriage if it's just you and your spouse trying to figure it out. You're just not. Like,
yeah, it's true.
You will have I don't care who you are. I don't care how many books you have on your bookshelf, how many DVD marriage things you're going to watch. You need your marriage. And so.
Sorry for the wind. I got to find a spot I can do this without all these issues. The wind. Do you guys hear the wind? I know. Finding a place that I can go without children is very challenging. All right. Sorry. Keep going. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
So counselor, you need good counsel in your marriage. You just have to get people, you have to get good mentors in your life. You've got to get a community around you that is willing to support you, help you, call you out. That's just a big one.
And we've had that.
So let me ask you this. Go ahead, dear.
We've had that at every stage of our relationship. The counseling we got before we were married, the mentors that were in our lives after we were married, the simple stuff, being in the house for dinners, watching how their marriage worked, processing our questions. It was like you just need the advice of other people who've gone before you, who've worked on certain areas in their marriage where it's a really strong area for them, and they can break off some wisdom. And you're going to need that from as many people as you can possibly get it from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now speak to this on it, because I think that is so critical. But there's also the component with that of the posture we take in those accountability conversations and with those people. Like, what voice are we really giving to them?
Oh, absolutely.
Speak to that for a second.
If you're going to invite counsel into your marriage, which if you want a healthy marriage, if you're in the first 5 years of your marriage and things are rough, probably are, according to statistics, you need counsel. If counsel is going to work, you have to be humble. You just have to have a posture of humility. You don't know what you're doing. You don't have all the answers, and people further along than you are going to have wisdom that you just don't have, because experience will give them a greater wisdom, and it's biblical. It's in the multitude of many that there's good counsel, and so you just have to find that. And I do hear a lot of people well, I don't have a lot of good, healthy married couples, or we don't have a church like Jesus Culture or Bethel where there's all these amazing whatever. Don't downplay who God has put in your life. Don't downplay
it's good.
The Smiths at your church that are elders and they've been married for 50 years. Well, just because they haven't written books or they're not Instagram famous doesn't mean their marriage isn't awesome and their wisdom will greatly benefit you in your younger years. Don't downplay that. Look at who is in your life, I don't know who's in your family or who the people are. There is someone who has been married longer than you, who has something to offer you that can help you.
It's really good.
And you just need that. You need to humble yourself and get that community around you.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing to that too. For us, and she touched on it there at the end, it was humility. We had to practice humility. We had to come and bring up our problems that felt embarrassing, that felt shameful.
Totally.
Where we felt like idiots. Why aren't we better at this? And I really struggled with that a ton. I didn't like having to bring our problems before people and look like I know what I'm doing. But that's where humility kicks in. You have to recognize, I actually need your guys' help. I need your wisdom. We are drowning. We're not knowing how to navigate these things. Those couples, if they've been married for 10 years, they have 10 years of experience. They have 10 years of compromising, working on things, and they're going to be able to give you advice.
Yeah, it's going to be. Marriage is hard work. So people
it's good.
to try to get through this with the least resistance, or not have to maybe be, you know, lay down some pride. It's just like not going to work. So, you know.
Yeah, it's really good. And I even want to encourage those that are in ministry, because a lot of our following is in ministry in some capacity. Trust in your pastor, even though he's also your boss. You know, that can be really tough. That's probably been one of the greatest things we've done, is our leader and our boss has always been someone we've also trusted with our personal life. Even though that can be scary, I think that person sees you both on a regular basis. You know, we've always encouraged with this point of, hey, it's got to be somebody that sees and knows you both well enough to be able to know when you're even lying to yourself sometimes.
Absolutely.
So that they can see and wait a sec, something's off today.
Yep.
What's going on, and ask you a question that really no one else would know if they didn't know you the way that they do.
Absolutely.
And you know, so encouraging people to kind of step out of that uncomfortability of talking to a boss if you're in ministry.
Yeah, and you have to know that you just don't know everything. You don't know what you don't know. And I continually have to trust the input of people around me, my mentors and my counsel, even when I disagree. You know, like, hey, Becky, you seem like, you know, you got an edge. You don't
ever disagree with Banning, do you? Ever?
Yeah, that's just not going to happen. So and, you know, I'd rather err on the side of getting people in my life and taking their input and trusting them than not. So that would be another one.
Good.
Control, counsel. And then the last would be communication. Learning healthy communication. I feel like, oh gosh, if I could just redo those first 5 years and have taken that first, if I would have taken the time before we got married, but if we would have taken that first year and just admitted we don't know how to communicate and we need to learn how to communicate better. There's so many good resources, like good books and good courses, but it is a vital skill that I don't know why we're not taught in like public schools, how to communicate, but you have to learn. There is a way to communicate. Yeah. Like there is a way.
Yeah.
Wow, it's really messy in here, hun. Wow, the house is a mess. That's a really crappy message to send your spouse. What I want to say, what I'm actually trying to say is, can you help me clean up? Can we get a plan? Wow, it's hot in here. Are you hot? Wow, it's hot. Do you mean to say that you'd like me to turn the air conditioning on? And we've just learned these backhanded ways of communicating, these little jabs, because we just don't know how to communicate our needs. We don't know how to communicate what's going on inside of us. And if we could learn in the early years of marriage, both parties, how to communicate our needs, it will go a long, long way. The biggest, we've done we've jumped into a lot of different resources, but the best we've ever found is Brave Communication by Dan Fairley, which it's a DVD, or probably online now at the Bethel.
By the way, Moral Rev followers, we actually did a podcast with Dan Fairley on Brave Communication. So go check that out.
Yes.
So boom, there you go. So first, you know, full disclosure, the first year we got married, the first year of our marriage, I was 19, he was 21. And at the end of that first year, I was Googling how to get a divorce. I was like, how do I reverse this decision? It's awful. We were doing so bad. We got some.
I can't even picture this, because Derek is one of the most likable humans on the planet. So how would you not want to be married to him?
Yeah, let me take you back to 2008. And let me introduce you to 21-year-old Derek. So
he's the butterfly that used to be a pet caterpillar.
So we, you know, God just intervened. We humbled ourselves. We got some counsel in our lives. First thing our counselor told us to do was watch Brave Communication. So we watched the whole DVD series where it just changed. We had no idea the underlying issues and how we were communicating to one another. So we go back to our counselor and he goes, how was it? Oh my gosh, it was awesome. We're going to do better. He goes, no, go watch it again. And we're like, no, we just watched it. He's like, yeah, you have no idea how deep rooted these unhealthy communication patterns are. So go watch it again. It's called Brave Communication by Dan Fairley. You could probably Google it. It's on the Bethel store. I'm sure he's digitized it by now.
I think my wife has some way to highlight the resources at the end of this on our Instagram. Okay. So it'll probably be somewhere that you can get if you follow MR.
Yeah. So we watched it a second time. And I mean, we had to put it, I mean, you can watch it, but if you're not going to put it into practice, you know, it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
And I mean, those, we still use those tools that we watched 10 years ago. And that is still how we talk to one another. I remind myself, oh, wait a second, what am I trying to say? How am I communicating? And so that,
Yeah, and it comes back to actually what I was saying in the beginning about that issue of control. Our ability to learn how to communicate. For me to be able to say, Becky, when you do this thing or say this thing or need this thing, I feel a lot of anxiety. Now, that's not necessarily an answer in and of itself, but it allows us both to be seen, to both communicate what's actually going on. And now we can start to work through what the solution for this is going to look like.
So good.
Cool. We are going to have to make adjustments towards one another so that we lower the anxiety, so that we protect our connection, you know, and that's what it looks like practically. And you're going to do that through being able to be really honest. That's part of why it's called brave communication. You're going to have to say some vulnerable things. They're going to feel hard to say. They're going to feel really clunky and hard to get out. But the more and more you do it, she gets to know me better. I get to know her better.
Yep.
Our need to control each other comes way, way down.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, I would say probably 100% of our fights those first 5 years was because of unhealthy communication. I mean, really, it's like when you learn just how to talk better with respect and how to healthily get out what's inside of you, it's like the fights are diffused. You don't need to learn much else outside of that. And so that was big.
It's great.
And just don't assume that you know. If you are having problems, if you're having a rough sex life, if you're having a rocky marriage, if you guys are disconnected, don't assume that you're doing everything right. It's probably because you don't have healthy communication, you don't have good counsel, and you're trying to control your spouse. And so go after those things.
It's good.
Yeah. So those would be three things. I feel like, again, we could talk forever about this, but I don't know if anybody has questions on any of that. You've got a lot of Brazil love, that's for sure.
Brazil.
We do. Brazil is like all over the social media like I've never seen.
The best. Brazilians are incredible. Love Brazilians.
Eli, you like those headphones, Eli? That's what I got to sit on planes and not have to listen to anybody else.
That's what you got.
Everybody knows.
That's what you got to be at home.
And now I didn't know it was a prophetic purchase for the quarantine.
Yeah.
You know how people know how cheap I am. I am the cheapest man on the planet. I hate spending money on anything, and I was willing to spend $280 on these, and it was 280 of the best dollars I have ever spent.
Life-changing.
Life-changing. Seriously. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? We would love to answer some. Becky and Derek graciously offering to do that. Love to answer anything. Maybe something on sex, since we are Moral Revolution. You know, how to have a great sex life.
Yep.
Anything like that? Anybody want to know? I'm not asking that because I have a great sex life. But for anybody that would want to know that, you're welcome to ask it.
Control, counsel, communication. If you start to work on those, you're going to have way better sex.
Oh,
there we go.
Yeah.
If there's no anxiety and you're connected, sex is instantly better. Communication also helps as well. If you can actually learn how to say what you need, it works in that area.
Even in the moment, even in the moment, like, hey, I don't like that. Hey, I do like that. Do that more. Like, that's super helpful for people. And it feels weird because it feels unorganic. But I mentioned this last week to people. Be okay with intentionality in your marriage rather than thinking it has to be this spontaneous, organic passion scene from a movie.
Right.
Right? Like, it's super significant to be intentional.
Yep. Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
The 3 Ps, I'm going to learn those before marriage. Yes, that would be that. Video pause. Oh,
there he is.
I'm having issues here. Good thing we're wrapping up.
Yes, no worries. People were asking.
I'm going all the way back up. I finally came.
I was going to say what you're doing for those, because there's not a lot of single people on here. Becoming a single person is you are working on becoming the best spouse. So you don't start working on this stuff after you get married. That's not when you start now. Start becoming a healthy person. Start good communication now. Get comfortable now. Work on your
It's kind of like coronavirus. It's like we got coronavirus and everyone's like, wash your hands, wash your hands. Wait a sec. Weren't we supposed to be doing this the whole time?
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, there's more questions. Some of these things I don't know if I want to go into, but
Who is that?
Oh, there, golly. I'm willing to talk about good sex life first night. You guys feel comfortable talking about that or no?
Yeah, they're asking all kinds of things.
Let's go for it. I mean, I'm going to be on here. You guys can jump off whatever you need. I'm great with, you know, that you can't say anything that can offend our audience, right? I know I've offended yours before, but you can't offend ours.
So some women were saying, how do you tame your tongue? I have a hard time
Struggling with
controlling my spouse without realizing it, or keeping my criticism to myself. You have to understand that your issue with trying to control, where's Jen? Well, this is Derek Johnson. We're not related to Brian and Jen Johnson.
You realize, like,
we both got great.
Becky, I think you were at this event. We did a Q&A at one of the MR events, and one of the questions was, where's Havilah? Do you remember that? Were you at that event? So we're like, Havilah doesn't run this thing anymore, all right? Anyways.
Jen's probably at home. We love Jen. Our friends with Jen. And yeah, you can connect with her on her Instagram.
That's right.
You know, I would encourage you to understand that you're trying to control your spouse is not their problem. It's your issue. So something's going on inside of you. Your anxiety's backed up when you're out of control. You're needing something from your spouse that maybe you're not getting, and maybe he doesn't know because you don't know how to communicate it. So you gotta, again, if I've got tendencies to control my spouse, and I'm doing it without realizing it, you gotta slow down and you gotta go, all right, what's going on inside of me? Am I feeling anxious about something right now? And do I only feel good when I have control of the situation? And you got to do some work to dive deep into that. Get with some friends and counsel, read a couple books, get resources on what is going on that's causing you to do that.
Right.
Well, you got to become self-aware. Like, a lot of how we operate is out of our subconscious, like habits that have been created. Just becoming consciously aware of what makes us operate is vital to identify it. So like, people don't like the word mindfulness or meditation. It feels like new agey or whatever, which I love with the way Chris teaches on it. He's like, no, this was in the Bible long before this was in the new age movement. This is something that God's been teaching us. Right. It's just basically, I'm becoming aware of my own thoughts. I'm becoming aware of my own actions and the why behind my actions. That's what, you Enneagram lovers love the Enneagram, because it helps you identify the why behind what you do. Like, what's the motive? Man, learning the motive can be really huge in helping you communicate, because all of a sudden I'm starting to understand, like, okay, why am I frustrated right now? Oh, I'm frustrated because my spouse didn't do this. Well, then if I can step back for a second, did my spouse even know that I wanted him to do that? Probably not.
Right.
Because I probably have been passive aggressive without realizing I'm passive aggressive. I probably haven't clearly communicated. Even me, I'm not a passive aggressive person, but I can find myself doing passive aggressive things in marriage where I want her to organically do something, or she wants me to organically do something that we haven't communicated. And one of the things we've started to say, hey, you know what, let's be fair to each other. It's not fair to want you to do something I haven't clearly and gracefully communicated to you that I want done, and vice versa.
That's right.
Absolutely. Yep. All right.
Well, we love you guys. Thanks for jumping on.
Yes,
Oh, man,
thanks for
so
having
much
us.
fun.
Oh, geez. There we go. I'm having so many issues. I promise I had none of these issues last week.
What the heck? The enemy is wanting to destroy marriages and trying to silence us.
Through
That's right.
Wi-Fi, but he will not prevail.
That's right. He will not prevail. Not today, devil.
Not today.
Devil, not today. Cool. Well, we love you guys.
We love you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks. Tell Kate I said hi.
I will. She's off with the kids at lunch, but tell the same to the little ones that don't actually know who I am. So I guess it wouldn't make any sense to say Cole said hi.
Uncle Cole says hi. Who?
It's, who?
That's good.
All right.
Love you guys. Peace.
Peace.
Hey, awesome. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, we'll post the connection there to Brave Communication. If you go back and look at our podcast, you go to our YouTube, you'll see an old video, not old actually, it's just in the last couple of months with Dan Fairley, where he talks about Brave Communication and he unpacks that. So really, really valuable, really critical. The statement on trauma, our last few podcasts have been for marriages. We did 2 weeks with a couple named the Kings, Dear Young Married Couple, where they have a ministry called Dear Young Married Couple. They do online counseling, a ton of focus on marriages. The one that's about to release this week was with Dr. Russell Irwin. He talks about marriage and helping people with sex and marriage and things that can be helpful or things that can be harmful to overcome challenging sexual situations in marriage. So we're really trying to infuse a ton of powerful content for marriages. Check out the podcast. We'll post the links to a lot of the different resources that are available. Thanks. Love you, folks.